Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your technical critic, and it's time for my review of The Legend of Korra, In Harm's Way, and The Metal Clan, episodes 4 and 5 for season 3. And I have to say, episode 4, episode 5 on the other hand. And here's my reasoning for this. If you look at the episodes 1 and 2, 3 and 4, and then 5 and 6 coming up, they all pair up together, and they're good together. The problem is, the way that they've cut these episodes is you have to wait a week to get the other half of the story. And while that's good for making you want to, just making you eager for what comes next, it breaks the story up and it doesn't make it flow as well. Also, when you rate these as individual episodes, episode 5 is much, much better than episode 4. Just on a technical level, on a storytelling level, and just everything about it is just better. And before I launch into this review, as always, like, favorite, subscribe, but most importantly, leave that comment down below. That way I can include it in the discussion. We're going to have the discussion afterwards. I'm going to put the annotation here somewhere if you want to skip forward. But I suggest you watch this so that when you make your comment, you can troll me properly. Or you fully know how I feel. So, let's begin. Episode 4. The problems I have with episode 4, I have 3.5 problems with episode 4. The first one is, of course, you've got stupid Bo Lynch shtick throughout the entire thing. The second one is the Kai and Jinora romance, and the third one, and I think this is the most important, has to be the role that the Dai Li play in this episode. They are hamstrung in this episode, and I'm sorry to say it, but they didn't go as far as they could have. They held back. You have to understand, the Dai Li are the Avatar equivalent of the KGB. They are this faceless, sinister, silently efficient, just pure villainous organization dedicated to whoever is the most powerful person in the Earth Kingdom. It just so happens to be that the monarch and the most powerful person just so happen to be the same thing this time. And these guys do not mess around. I mean, you got a little glimpse of it in episode 3, where they just appear and take Kai. It's not like there's no weird one-liners. There was no struggle. It was just grab, done. He was gone. They are that sinister present. I mean, even going all the way back to Avatar Airbender, when they had to bust Appa out from underneath the old Dai Li prison. It was, I mean, these are the guys who perfected mind control and just made sure everything was kept the way it was in Ba Sing Se. I mean, when Katara, the Avatar, and everyone was just busting them out, they escaped literally by the skin of their teeth. And Jet died in that episode, so these are not the guys that you screw around with. In this episode, you get some of that, but not as much as you would have expected. For example, they go in. This episode is essentially a spy thriller. So they've got to find the kid, rescue the airbenders, and then bust out. It's without the queen knowing, and get past all the Dai Li. So it's a spy thriller. They do that. They break into the Dai Li compound. They grab the airbenders. They're on their way out. Korra is walking out of the air temple and she says, "It's all clear. I think we've made it." They pan up. It's just Dai Li agents all over the scaffolding, and you're like, "Oh no, you spoke too soon." They jump down in a perfect semicircle, and then more just rush in. This is not just 1 or 2 guards. This is an army. The Dai Li is the elite earthbending army. These are the earthbenders to top all earthbenders. These are the people that topped would have a hard time fighting. They are that good. And then the Earth Queen walks in, like an old school Bond villain. She's like, if you take these airbenders, she's basically like, I see these airbenders haven't learned their loyalty yet. Like, she is literally an old school Bond. She snaps her fingers and says, take care of them. And then just turns around and walks away. It was a magnificent build-up to a lackluster fight. Because after she goes and she basically says, taking those airbenders will constitute an act of war and I'm going to bring my full force down on you, what happens? The Daily prepare to attack, and what do the airbenders do? They all blast them with air. Now, time out. These airbenders have only just been picked up and have only just started being trained, and the best one of them apparently is Kai. So, the logic then is that the Daily, who have been trained from a very, very young age by people who are essentially trained by Avatar Kyoshi, coming up, these guys apparently cannot defeat a bunch of semi-trained airbenders. Now, even though they have Tenzin and Korra with them, that's still two expert airbenders and a bunch of semi-trained airbenders against an army of earthbenders. And they, not only do they defeat them, they outrun them. Now, the Daily are famous for launching themselves into the air with just blocks of stone. They just go whoop, and they use that to get wherever they need to. Remember, these guys took out 5 generals in Airbender with simultaneously, like just without metal bending or anything. They just did all that, and these are the people that Azula was afraid of. Remember, she had to really bluff her way into getting them to follow her. But these are the people that even Azula would not go up against. So the Airbenders and Tenzin and Korra, they just go and put a massive blast of air on them. The Daily go and they brace themselves by putting stone behind their feet so that they're not blown back. And you think, okay, the Daily are going to attack. Nope. The Daily do not fire a single shot in this entire episode at the escaping Airbenders. They only fire them at Bolin, Mako, Kai, and Jinora as they're escaping for comedy purpose. It is underwhelming in the extreme. You want to know how they escape? While Korra and Tenzin are blasting air at these guys for probably what is a full 5 minutes, and they haven't done a thing, all the other airbenders scamper up the scaffolding to the waiting airships that have come to get them. Now, I know that airbending has not been a thing for 170 years. It's like one of those mysterious martial arts that people have heard about, but almost nobody except maybe a few people in the deep forests of Brazil or somebody who lives in one of the remote regions of Tibet. It's one of those things that they know, right? But the rest of us would have no idea about it and no idea how to fight against it. But if you put that guy up against, let's say, 40 karate masters, you would expect, yeah, they wouldn't just stand there and let them attack them. They would at least try and fight back, right? But the Daily don't do that. They don't fight back at all. They don't even pursue them the way the Daily pursue them. Instead of launching themselves up and going after the airbenders onto the scaffolding, they start very slowly climbing up after them so that the airbenders, while they're climbing, can then stop, turn around, position themselves, direct a blast of air downwards, and then blast the Daily off of the scaffolding. It is so out of character. They've hamstrung these villains, and these are good old school villains. And this is not good. It's not good at all. It waters down the conflict. And then, of course, there's the romance between Kai and Jinora. I'm less angry about it than I should be. Simply because, look, Avatar Korra writers. Simply because you have a male and female character of roughly the same age together doesn't mean that they have to suddenly try and date each other. Can't they just be friends? Can't they have that same friendship relationship before we try and launch them into we try and launch them into a romantic one. I mean, this is essentially what happens not just in this episode, but in the 5th episode too, and I'm going to explain that on its own. But the show is extremely self-aware now, and Korra even references it. She's like, she turns to Jinora. She's like, well, because Jinora is using her spirit bending to basically project herself into places around Ba Sing Se to try and find the airbenders. Korra goes, well, I know you have a connection to Kai. Tenzin's like, what? Like, you can literally see question marks up here above his head. Like, what the heck is going on? He's like, I'm like, you've known Kai for 2 days. You don't have a connection with it. You barely know who he is. Plus, he ran off. He ran off so that he could go and steal people's money. How much of a connection does she actually have with him? It's just so childish. Did they not learn from seasons 1 and seasons 2? I know that we've exhausted all possible relationship between Mako, Bolin, Korra, and Asami, unless they decide to go and make Korra and Asami date each other. But they don't have they simply don't have the courage that it would take to challenge the censor and put Asami and Korra together as a couple. So what that means is, and did they not learn from seasons 1 and 2? We don't need the characters to date each other in order to be strong characters. They can just be there on their own, and then whatever happens, happens. Whatever relationship that forms will feel more organic instead of forcing these two characters together simply because they're the same age and they happen to be the correct genders for each other. You don't need that. You're good writers. You don't need a relationship. I feel like we are past the point in this Legend of Korra series where we would need to see two characters come together romantically. We've already seen it fail so many times that we're essentially burnt out on the subject. It's not necessary and it's holding you back. And the third thing that really ruined this episode has to be Bolin. Now, you've heard me rant many times on the unnecessity of Bolin, and the way that they've written this character, like I said, I wanted to slit his throat for ages. Stop it. Just stop it. You're trying to insert comedy where you don't need to insert comedy. Let me give you an example. The very beginning of the episode, Bolin and Mako are leaving their grandmother's house in order to go back to Korra to tell her about what's going on with the airbenders. So they go, they say their goodbyes, they're hugging their grandma, the rest of the family comes in and they give them a hug. Beautiful, beautiful, touching scene. If they just zoomed out from there silently, it would have been wonderful. But Bolin starts talking, and what does Bolin start doing? He starts naming each and every member of his family. Cousin this, cousin that. And he does that for the entire scene, and it's so unnecessary. And it's not funny. If you want to make something funny, make it situational. Let's take a look at Tenzin. Tenzin is not just a stick in the mud. He is the stick in the mud for seasons 1 and seasons 2. Season 3, episode 2. Him going around from village to village to village, genuinely trying to get the airbenders to come and train with him, is probably one of the funniest things I have ever seen in an Avatar, in any Avatar episode. I laughed so hard watching that. And it's not that they were trying to it's not that Tenzin was trying to be funny. No, not at all. He was genuinely serious about what he was trying to do. But because the situation is going awry in a way that the character doesn't expect, it genuinely makes a comedic moment there. Look at the scene that comes right after that, with Korra and the hipster arguing with each other. The fact that she, of all people, is lecturing a hipster about responsibility is hysterical. Here's what you've got to do. Take the characters that you've developed, take their expectations, turn them on their heads. You don't have to do it every single time. You can toss in a little bit of slapstick here and there where it's necessary and where it makes sense to put it. but don't cram it into a scene. You don't need to make every single scene hilarious. You could have a genuinely touching scene, like Bolin and Mako saying goodbye to their grandmother, who they may never see again. Because guess what? We know that Bolin and Mako were fighting the Dai Li. Their family's still in the Earth Kingdom. You don't think there's not going to be some kind of reprisal on them? Remember, look at who we're dealing with. We're dealing with the Earth Queen, probably one of the most petty, jealous, and this is not stuff I'm making up. This is her personality that we see from the very beginning. She's one of the most petty, uptight characters that you will ever see in a ruler, and their family is literally right there, and they probably know that they were just with their family. You don't think there's going to be some kind of reprisal there? It would be genuinely good if they said a heartfelt goodbye before whatever terrible thing that's about to happen happens to their grandmother. Another thing that happens, as soon as they get back to Asami and Korra, who are having a nice little scene, they're having a little practice sparring thing. Asami's got her boxing pads up, Korra's punching away, letting off steam. Asami's like, you know what, I think we need to take a break. Genuinely good scene between the two characters. Mako and Bolin come running up, and as I said, this show is very self-aware. Bolin collapses to the ground and just starts spouting nonsense, and it's supposed to be funny. Asami, God bless you, Asami, for thinking and saying what we're all thinking. She turns to Mako and goes, "Can you explain what just happened?" In under 10 seconds, he basically sums up everything that occurred in the last episode and everything that they learned. Great, wonderful, perfect. We didn't need Bolin doing what he did. You're ruining the character and you're breaking up the scenes. It's not good. Stop it! And the final thing, the half that I talked about, is, and this goes back to some of the obviousness that was going on in this episode. You've got, they're basically, as I said, I'd be fine with this episode if they were just setting up for the future conflict. And I know what they're setting up to do. And I know what you're thinking, how could you possibly know what's going to happen in this series? Well, just bear with me. The Earth Queen, what's the first thing that she says to Korra? It's about the old Fire Kingdom colonies that became Republic City, how that was technically Earth Kingdom territory, how it belongs to the Earth Kingdom, blah, blah, blah. What else has she said? If you take these Earthbenders, I'm going to come down on you with my full force. Well, what does that mean? Does that mean that she's going to track down Korra? I don't think she's going to send her airships out. Plus, I don't think she has a reliable way of tracking Korra down in the entire Earth Kingdom. So what's probably going to happen is she's going to use this attack on her conscripted soldiers, which Boomy was right. She does technically have the right to conscript her own citizens. She's going to use this attack to go and attack Republic City, and this is how they're going to solve the spirit plot. She's going to attack Republic City. The citizens are going to go and defend themselves. As they're attacking the city, they're going to hit the spirit wilds. The spirits are then going to come out, and then the spirits and the citizens are going to band together to drive away the Earth Queen's army, and that's how they're going to solve that whole spirits and people living in harmony together. How do I know this? Because this was actually a plot of one of the graphic novels that they're trying to use as explanation, as bridger really, between Legend of Korra and Airbender. And basically what happens is you've got Fire Nation and Earth Nation people living within the land that would eventually become Republic City. Some of them are good with living each other. Some of them are against living with each other. Some of them are outright fighting each other. But when the Earth Kingdom and the Fire Kingdom come to claim this place as their own and the citizens as their own, everyone bands together to fight off both armies, and then Aang goes and breaks it off into its own little place, and that becomes the United Republic. And that's essentially how that whole thing got started. It's the same plot, and I'm fine with them using it over again, but it just seems so obvious. Like, if I can figure it out, it's way too obvious. You're not posting any very good twist there. And I think the problem with that is they could have done a more complex way to solve the spirit problem that they just dropped. They essentially dropped it in episode 1. They basically dropped the spirit problem until the end. The problem is that they don't have the episodes to do it. They've got 13 episodes, and we're already at episode 5. 6 if you count the leaked one online. So, Viacom, listen to me. You want to make this even better than it already is? Extend them more episodes. Give them 20 episodes. Give them 24 episodes. Give them the length of the episode season that they had in Airbender, and they'll be able to write more complex plots. Don't just be grabbing cash. Actually invest in your show, and it will show returns. You want more people to watch? Then don't give them a short season, because a short season means they have to simplify all their plot lines to just checklists. All right? Everything else that happened in this episode was very good. The fight between the fight to break out the fourth member of the band, Sparky Boom Girl, or Pi Lee, I believe, is what her name is. But some people online are calling her Sparky Boom Girl, in honor of the previous character that had her similar power. And it was a very good fight. Zuko looks, and this is my first. Zuko looks extremely like his grandfather. Go back to the Airbender episode where they're paralleling Zuko and the Zuko and Aang's stories, where basically they show for one of the few times Zuko's grandfather. You'll see the two of them, their character design is extremely similar. He looks a lot like his grandfather. He also looks a very lot like Avatar Roku. So it's just a thing I noticed. But with that battle that happened, and with a lot of the stuff that happened in episode 5, I have to say this: they had better start explaining very, very quickly how Zahir got his airbending powers. I have some general idea of how he might have done it, but overall, for someone who just got his powers 2 weeks ago, and again, the show is very self-aware of this. Kaya says to him in episode 5, for someone who just got his powers a few weeks ago, you know a lot about airbender culture. And I think they're hinting at it, but I think what might be the case is that he might have trained with one of the air acolytes that Avatar Aang set up. Basically, and this goes back again to the graphic novels, Aang had a group of followers called the Avatar Fan. They're basically Avatar fangirls. And to make a long story short, he basically goes and he turns them into air acolytes, and he basically teaches them about airbender culture in order to spread the culture throughout the earth and fire and water and all the other kingdoms, right? And it seems like that might be the case, but I don't know. He basically taught them airbending as a form of meditation. So I'm guessing that's what happened. But if he didn't train with Tenzin at one of these air acolytes, it's going to be very hard for them to explain. I don't want them to come out and just be obviously like blatant. This is exactly what happened. But you can't just have a character be good at airbending. It's not. It's a plot hole, and it's a very blatant plot hole. It's one that you need to fix. Otherwise, you're going to have problems. That's it. The rest of episode 4, it was fun. You had some good scenes between Korra and Asami. Lin Beifong shows up, and they're planning the attack. Korra, she's being her hot-headed character, but her anger is focused because she has something to focus it on. So it's very, very good to see these characters doing what they do best. It truly was. Those scenes were truly good to watch. As I said, my only issue, Dai Li escape scene, and like in the very end, they're escaping from the Dai Li. The Dai Li are hurling boulders at them. One goes over Korra's head. She doesn't even duck. She doesn't flinch. It is the strangest thing you will ever see. The episode ends on a very good note, I should also comment, where basically throughout the episode the airbenders have been referred to as property of the Earth Kingdom. And Tenzin goes, "You're no one's property." now I can give you a choice. You can choose to come with me, and I can teach you to the Northern Air Temple, and I can teach you airbending. Or, if you want, we can take you and we can hide you. We can take you wherever you want and hide you there. Probably a small village here or somewhere, and you can go there and you can live in relative safety. And and I think unanimously, all the airbenders elect to go with Tenzin. And you see the tears in his eyes. And it's such a beautiful scene, because for him, it's the realization of a dream that he didn't even know he had. Or if he had it, it's the realization of a dream he had on a scale that he could have never possibly imagined. Because Tenzin's character, look at his character. He is truly the last airbender. Aside from himself and just his few kids, they are all that is left of the airbender culture, and it is essentially up to him and his family to keep this one thing alive. And if eventually there ever are enough airbenders to rebuild the air nomad race, they'll all essentially be relatives of one another. And then all of a sudden, here is what is necessary to make a dream that he doesn't think is going to be possible for maybe hundreds and hundreds of years. I mean, in 70 years, they've gone from 1 airbender to 4 airbenders. Now, here's an entire race of airbenders. It is truly beautiful, just the way that it's set up, and just the way that they show it, and the character that you've come to know. It makes it extremely beautiful, and I could not be happy with the ending that they had to episode 4. So that's episode 4. Let's move on to episode 5. Alright, now let's talk about episode 5. Episode 5, as I mentioned at the beginning of this review, is objectively better than episode 4. It's objectively better on a technical standpoint, on a character development standpoint, on a plot standpoint, on an artistic standpoint. It blows episode 4 out of the water. There's no contest here. Even Bolin gets better in this episode. Right at the 12-minute and 38-second mark, you see him turn, and it's like, it's astonishing. And you're like, wow, just wow. And I have a theory on that, and I'll get into that later, because I know that you guys are so eager to hear me talk about Bolin some more after that 10-minute rant. But anyways, this episode starts out with they're in a field, they're going from place to place getting airbenders. Lin is trying to convince Korra that she needs to go back to Republic City so she can be protected. Korra basically says, no, we've spent way too much time in Republic City, we're not going back there. So they hear about this airbender in Zaofu, and they decide they're going to go there, they're going to collect the airbender, and they're going to take her to see Tenzin. So they go to Zaofu, and as they pull up on the city, it is gorgeous. Just the layout that they show is exquisitely beautiful. And it doesn't just stop there. As they take you through the city, just everything is marvelous. This entire episode is an artistic masterpiece. And that's why I say this with absolutely no malice. There was one scene where the art was not as good as throughout the rest of the episode. Like even in the little things, like just the layout of the dining room, the layout of the studies, the layout of the bedroom, just the way everything was done, the layout of the courtyard where people are playing and working and doing all kinds of stuff. It's just that good. But there's just one little tiny scene where it all falls apart. It's where at night, the way the city is laid out, they have metallic pedals that they basically bring up, kind of like walls. And they're using a 3D animation to show these massive walls of metal coming up. And you can only imagine the power and the skill of the metal benders who are bringing these up. But the 3D that they use, and I say this with no malice whatsoever, it looks like something out of Sharknado. And I know that they're probably on a budget and it's probably less expensive to animate that scene with the 3D animation, but the 3D is good for big scenes, like when you've got an airship turning in like a really tight space, or just something massive going on, that's when the 3D animation really shines, especially compared to season 2, where you could see the gaps in the celluloid in season 2 with the 3D animation. It was horrible. The 3D animation is so much better placed here. But just for this particular scene, I feel like the 3D didn't work. And I know that you guys are on a budget and you probably couldn't have done it with the 2D. It was probably way more expensive to animate, but it's just a tiny little thing that I noticed. It's not a diss, it's not a bad thing, it's just something I noticed. It's compared to everything else that was so beautiful, that was the one scene that really did not work. So they go to the city. They meet a truth seer, who's basically taking them to the city, who's explaining everything. He explains about Toft, how Toft is the founding belief behind the city, that everyone can reach a much higher potential, blah, 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 blah. And basically the show asks the question, are we going to see Toft? And they're like, no. Toft is out wandering the world somewhere. She used to check in on the city from time to time, but she's off seeking enlightenment. Now, they're heavily hinting that she might not be alive anymore. But Lord Zuko is alive. Katara is alive. Toph was so much younger than them when she joined the Avatar group. She can't be dead. I feel it. She's out there somewhere. Maybe she'll come back in the very end of the season as, you know, like a brief cameo. And we still have to see Azula. So that's a thing that has to happen. We need to see Toph and we need to see Azula. This will happen. I guarantee it. She's not dead. She's out there somewhere. So they go. They're like, yes, you'll meet the Airbender, but first the Airbender's mother wants to speak with you. That's fine. That's a reasonable request. So they go, and it turns out that the Airbender's mother is Suyin Beifong. She is the half-sister of Lin Beifong. And you get introduced to the entire Beifong family, not just Lin and her sister and the Airbender, but the whole family. The way they do it in a way that you see each and everyone's personalities. Like you see Wei and Wing, they're athletic. They're playing a game that they invented that is like a cross between hockey and ultimate frisbee. You see Juan, who is the artistic one, the dark, moody, emo one. You could tell because he's got the Skrillex hair with the long on one side and the shaved on. It looked good on girls. I've never cared for it on guys, but it looked good on girls. And he's very touchy about his art. And then you've got Opal, who's nice and quiet. She's just sitting there reading her book. So you've got like she's a nice, sweet girl. So you've got that nice introduction to everybody, and everything is going great. And then Lynn shows up, and she is not having any of it. They don't beat around the bush. These two, she does not like her sister. Her sister clearly likes her, but she does not like her sister, not at all. And I think I know the reason why, and I think I understand. And it's explained halfway between the Truth Seer and halfway between Suyin. Suyin basically is basically telling Korra about her backstory. And you find out about their home life. How Toft, coming from a very strict, and this happens with all parents. Whatever a parent grew up with as a child that they saw as a problem, when they have kids, they then seek to eliminate that problem. For example, if as a kid the parent didn't get to go see a whole lot of movies when they were a child, when you're a kid, your parent, I guarantee you, will encourage you to see movies. She grew up in a very strict background where she had to just do what she was told all the time. So what she basically did, she said, okay, you know what, my kids, they can pretty much do whatever they want, and they can be whoever they want to be. I'm not going to stand in their way. I'm not going to try and force them to conform to anything. And as I said, this is a good thing in its own way, but everything has its problem. See, while she was letting them do that, Toph was being very busy, so she didn't have time to be with her kids. So her kids ended up trying to vie for her attention in two different ways. Lynn tried to vie for attention by following in her mother's footsteps, becoming chief of police, becoming a very strict metal bender, being very, not gung-ho, but being very upright about justice and everything. So she basically tried to imitate her mother. So Yin, on the other hand, went out and had adventures And she says she's a little bit more, she doesn't seem that rebellious, but I don't know. She says she's a little bit more rebellious, but she went on a pirate ship, she lived in a sandbender continent, she did all these wonderful things. And then she found a nice guy who happened to be a wonderful architect. They built this beautiful city, they had a bunch of wonderful, successful children, and they've built a life and they've become very successful. And I can see why Lynn, and essentially what happened is, as the truth seeker said, Lynn would come and visit them from time to time. I don't think, or not Lynn, Toph would come and visit them and spend time with them from time to time. I don't think Toph ever went to Republic City to visit Lynn, and I can see why she's resentful of that. She sees everything that her sister has, and Korra says this as well. She goes, "You're just a lonely, bitter old woman," and that's essentially the thing. She is lonely, and it's because of her loneliness that she's bitter. And she's bitter, why? Because in her mind, her mother favors Su Yin for some, how do I explain this? She basically favors Su Yin for building up this wonderful life and having this wonderful, and just having it all. That's what she sees. And then she thinks of herself trying to please her mother, and she never could. So she then resents Su Yin, which just forces her into this corner of loneliness away from her family. And the ending scene with Lynn crying, it just pulls that all together. I understand and I sympathize with you, Lynn. I sympathize with you so much, more than you could ever possibly know. So that's essentially what the character development is in this episode. It's setting up the family troubles between the Beifongs. With Lynn, she's a little bit jealous, and she also feels like she's left on the outside. And Su Yin, who feels like her sister hates her for no apparent reason, and she's basically given up on her ever coming back into the fold. And it's because of this that that the family dynamic needs to change. Now, that's the writing, and that's the technical aspect, and that's everything. On to Bolin. Yes, we're doing this. So, and this goes back to that relationship bit that I said I was going to talk about. This is where we talk about it. Opal meets Bolin. She is instantaneously infatuated with him. You can tell because her cheeks go very red as soon as she shakes his hand. And he instantly becomes sweet, old-fashioned Bolin. It is astonishing. Like, they're having dinner together, and the chef says, "I've got ginger-infused pea tendril and blah 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 blah." And he goes, "When he said ginger-infused pea tendril, I thought it was going to be disgusting." Blah 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 blah. And like they're just basically talking. He's being himself. He's being his sweet, naive, charming self, and it's wonderful to see. It's almost as if as soon as he gets away from his brother or Korra, or just the Avatar group, as soon as he's distracted from them, he instantly goes back to being the character he's supposed to be, which I find to be extremely strange, because it was around them originally that he was himself, and now it seems that he has to turn away from them in order to be himself. I don't understand. Listen, you guys are good writers with a good character, and you've clearly shown that you have good writing with a good character. Michael Dante DiMartino wrote this episode. I was shocked. I was truly and genuinely shocked. Where was this writing in season 2? Where was this? Josh and Michael wrote these 2 episodes. Where was this writing in season 2? Honestly, tell me. Because I'm just going to move on. I'm just going to continue reviewing. I'm not going to waste any more time on YouTube. But this is good. Keep it up. So basically, he turns back into his old self, and there's a scene with him and his brother where Mako's going, "So Opal seems to like you a lot," and then he basically becomes a dick again, where he's like, "Well, I'm not sure if she's Bolin material." What the hell is Bolin material? You imbecile, you ignoramus, you just completely ridiculous character. And then he goes, maybe she is Bolin material. Like, You just want to punch him. You want to punch him so hard. Then he walks up to Opal and he starts trying to be his stupid self. She turns to me and she goes, "Why are you acting so stupid? Thank you. Thank you for saying to him what I wanted to say for so long. Thank you for being representative of your audience. Thank you, thank you, thank you." She turns to me, she says, "What the hell is wrong with you?" And he breaks down. He literally breaks down back into his old character. It is, excuse me. It is truly interesting to watch because he goes, "Well, I like you and blah blah blah," and I get nervous when I know a girl likes me, and she turns and she goes, "Well, why do you think I like you?" And he goes even farther back into his character, and then she goes, "Relax, it's cool, I like you. Just be yourself." Right? Not too much of it. Just keep trying for me. Just be yourself. And I finally said, "Thank you. Be yourself, Bolin. Just, thank you. Thank you." I'm so grateful to Opal. It is wonderful, wonderful. So, it is, if that's the direction that they're going to go, as I said, you've got two characters who are the same age, opposite genders. As soon as they meet up, suddenly there's going to be a love interest. For whatever reason. They don't have to fall in love with each other, but you know what? If she keeps Bolin honest and the way he's supposed to be, I'm fine with it. Keep them together. As long as we have good Bolin, not stupid Bolin, I'm cool with it. Another interesting thing we see in this episode is Korra as an airbending teacher. The original plan is to take Opal to the Northern Air Temple. And her mother basically, "Oh, nonsense, this is where Opal lives. You're the Avatar. You can train her." And Korra and Opal have a wonderful moment where they're teaching each other. She goes, "Look, I'm not a very good student. I've only just begun to do this." Korra goes and says, "Yeah, you're the first person I'm ever teaching. So let's just both try and do this together." And then they both go and they're doing the airbender movements, and it's nice. It's nice to see. You got a mature Korra character. It's very good. Korra has truly come into her own over these last 5 episodes. I like it. I like it a lot. I hope they don't regress her the way that they did in season 2. I don't think they will. But as long as they keep doing what they're doing, they cannot go wrong at all. Another thing. This has to do with the Fearsome Four. That's what we're calling them, the Fearsome Four. The Fearsome Four, we learned that they wanted to kidnap Korra as a baby Avatar. My guess is that they actually don't want to harm her. What they wanted to do is they feel that the White Lotus is not doing the job that they're supposed to do, and they want to train Korra to do the job, to be the Avatar that they want her to be, not that the White Lotus feels that she needs to be. And I think that that's what's going to happen. I don't think that our main villains are going to be very villainous. I think that it's going to be a very nice twist to see what happens when they actually meet with the Avatar and see what actually goes down. Maybe they do want to kill the Avatar so that when the next Avatar comes along, they can control that Avatar and have that Avatar grow up with their particular philosophy. But here's the thing. Their villain, Zhao, not Zhao, what's his name? Hang on. Zengyu or whatever his name. Hang on, I got it here. Zahir. Their villain Zahir. He's an extremely spiritual person. Not unlike Unalaq, but he seems spiritual in a very calm sense, not in a we want to take over the world sense, but in a very subtle. He seems to be a much more subtle villain. And it's clear that they have a lot of history with the Avatar family between Tenzin, Kaya. I mean, Kaya almost instantaneously recognizes him. So there's a whole backstory there that I would love to know, and I hope that we get that as some kind of, small flashback exposition. I hope that we do get some of that, but I don't think they're as evil as they make them out to be. They're very powerful, yes, but I don't think they're. I don't think that they're the evil villains that they're being built. Maybe they are. Maybe Lord Zuko and everyone else is right. Maybe they truly do want to rule the world, but they. I don't know. I don't know what they want, but it will be very interesting to see what they do with those villainous characters. So, that's episode 5. Wonderful episode. Again, they need to explain how Zahir got his airbending, because we see him move through the airbender gate. So if he didn't train as an air acolyte, I don't know what to think. That is my leading theory, and I'm going to stick with it. But that's number 5, and I think it's time that we do our commentary and discussion. Alright guys, so let's get into the discussion. But before I do, just a few more comments on episode. I know, just a few more comments on episode 5 about some things I noticed. Number 1, Varric is back. I'm probably one of the biggest details you could probably overlook. I know, considering he was one of the funniest characters in Season 2, well, they brought him back for Season 3. And I was wondering, when will Varric pop up? But, the fact that they brought Varric back as essentially your slapstick comedy guy, because that's what he was. He was the fast-talking, slapsticky guy. Maybe he will replace Bolin's silly character. If he does, it means that somebody in Viacom heard my critique, or heard all of our critiques, and decided to listen to us. So that is a good thing. I hold out hope for that. Second thing I want to comment is, with episode 5, and this goes back to episode 1. Episode 1, Korra, and if you remember the driving scene, Korra and Asami are talking to each other. And Korra basically says, I'm glad that I have you here because I don't have any girlfriends that I can bounce stuff off of. Well, here's the problem. And I think you might see the foreshadowing that I've already put in. With the introduction of Lin Beifong, Suyin Beifong, and their daughter Opal, we now have 5, and of course Aunt Kai here off to the side. We now have 5 female main characters. And the problem is this. Asami, who so far has been getting some good character development with Korra, she's at risk of being pushed off to the side again. And let's just look at episode 5 and see where this... I mean, if you look at the whole history of the Avatar series, she's constantly getting pushed off to the side after Season 1. Season 2. The beginning of Season 2, you see the weight on her shoulders that she has to carry for future industries, and then that plot goes out the window to the Sting. And she basically becomes, I hate to say it, but she basically becomes the sexy lamppost. She's passed around as the damsel in distress to be helped by Mako and Varric. I'm sorry, but that's just what happens. In this season, she seems to revive her badass nature. And she's talking with Korra, she's helping Korra character develop, and the characters are working off of each other. You don't really see her as a businesswoman that much, but she seems to be successful, so that seems to be okay. Now, however, that we have strong Lin Beifong, strong Suyin, Opal is more of a student, so that's going to be more of a down-up relationship as opposed to an up-down relationship. It's going to be more Opal looking up to Korra, and Korra trying to help her, as opposed to Korra looking up to Lin and Suyin, because Suyin is a strong female character. So instead of bouncing off with Asami, who is someone her own age, she might now start to look up to Suyin, and then Asami, of course, gets pushed off to the side, like she did in Season 2. And I wouldn't say there's no way to do it so that the 3 of them, if they did it so that the 3 of them team up, or even the 4 of them, if Lin and Suyin put aside their differences somewhere in the later episodes, and they become the older characters that Korra can look up to and rely upon, while Asami is the strong friend character that Korra needs, who is her own age, and they write that well, then they should be able to keep it
so that everybody gets their same amount of screen time. The problem is when you have 11 characters, because remember you still have Tenzin, his family, the 4 villains, everyone who's in the main Avatar group. It's about 11 or 12 characters when you add them all together in a 22-minute show. That's approximately 2 minutes per character. It's not. it's someone has to give something up in order for everyone else to have their screen time. It's just the way the show is structured, and it's just the way everything is. All right, on to the discussion. So these are going to be the comments that were left on my channel on the videos, and just given to me through Google Plus, and the occasional tweet that one or two of you happens to send me. But before we start the discussion, I have to say this. I noticed a lot of you watch the last. I have some statistics here. The last reaction video I did to Korra, over 400 of you in the span of 2 weeks watched that 1 hour slog through those 3 episodes. Approximately 45 of you watched the review afterwards. Why? Just watch the review. This is the entertaining bit. This is the bit where we go in and we talk and we get our hands all nitty gritty into the dough. This is what you should want to see. Not me yelling at a screen. Keep watching the reaction video. But remember, don't just watch the reaction video and then leave. That's the bait. After that, come here. I'm going to put a big annotation at the front that says watch the review before you guys can watch the reaction video. So watch the reaction video. It's fun. It's fine. It's funny. I don't think I'm that great laughing on camera, but oh well. But just keep coming back. Come back here and leave a comment. 4 of you disliked the reaction video. If you're going to dislike it, leave a comment and say why. Just type something random. I don't care. I'll say it. I promise you. Just tell me what is going on. Alright, so let's start at the very beginning. First one is from The Real Bucky. Dude, The Legend of Korra Book 3 is awesome. You said you'd given up on the series. You're really missing out. Well, I'm here. And I actually responded and I said, well, I saw it, I liked it, but they better start coming up with some explanations quickly, otherwise I'm going to start to tear this series up just like the last one. As you've seen, I've already started to tear the series up a little bit, especially with episode 4. And I'll end episode 3. Episode 3 goes with episode 4. Now, this is where the real interesting bit comes in, because The Real Bucky, you said, like I said, quite a few issues with Book 2 can be refuted. Really? Quite a few issues can be refuted. I accept that challenge. I will make another video listing out. Here's what I'm going to do for you. I'm going to go through all of my reviews. I'm going to pick out I'm going to pick out all the points that I said were wrong with Season 2. I'm going to make a video, and I'm going to post it after this one. I'll post it tomorrow because it is 2:49 on my birthday, and AM on my birthday, and I'm exhausted. So I'm not going to do it right now, but I'll do it just a little bit later. And you have to refute every single thing I say. We're going to do this, but you can't do it in the comment section. You have to make a video, and you have to post it. And come on, I feel like we could be the Siskel and Ebert of this show. I say what I liked and didn't like. You say what you like and didn't like, and the two of us can butt heads like that. You want to? We can do this. But if you're going to refute, you have to come on camera and do it. No YouTube comment. You have to come on camera. You have to refute each and every single point. We're gonna do this. We're gonna do this right. Okay? So I raise you a YouTube video. So, moving on, Juan Rodriguez. Hey Juan, nice to see you as always. Good thing you still reviewed the episode. Now, good thing I did review the episode. Now, I too was surprised that this season got a good start. You have no idea how true your words are. I guess Nick knew the results of season 2 were not good, so decided they had to step up to keep their series going. Well, it's interesting that you say that, because season 3 got a really, really lackluster opening. Apparently, their ratings plummeted for the beginning of season 3, and there's actually rumors that they're going to cancel the show. So, if you've made it this far, good on you. But more to the point, if you watch this show and you like this show, go on Twitter, go on Facebook, go on Reddit, tell the people to watch this show. It's a good premise. They just need to keep with the good writing, and they'll have a good show on their hands. Like I've always said, if you have good writing and a good show, people are going to talk about it, people are going to watch it, and then more people are going to talk about it, and then more people are going to watch it. You keep up with the strong writing, you're going to have something good, and then people are going to watch it, and they're going to reward you for that with cash. That is the way that you do it. You make something good and people come. Or I have a, well, it's not necessarily true for YouTube, but it's true. It's true in many respects. So Nickelodeon, you keep making a good show, people will come. I guarantee it. I'm going to help you. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to tell all 25 of my subscribers that they've got to go and get another 25 people, and they've all got to watch this series, because you're doing good. You're doing good so far, and I hope that you keep doing well. Don't cancel this series before season 4. Unless you actually don't have anything to go with in season 4. In that case, well, I'll see you in the next Avatar series. Remember, Last Airbender is too big to fail. And I know that's kind of an oxymoron, but think about it. It was such a cultural phenomenon that we're still talking about it. And if something is that good, we're going to keep talking about it regardless. People are going to be talking about Game of Thrones for decades to come. And that's going to cause other people to go and watch Game of Thrones. We're going to be talking about Avatar The Last Airbender for decades to come. We're going to be showing it to our kids. It's like how we talk about Pokemon to our kids. I grew up with Pokemon, and now I talk to some of my students. When I have kids, surely Pokemon's still going to be a thing, and they're going to be catching the 1,100 whatever plus Pokemon they're going to have. And I'll be like, well, you should be doing this, 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 and this. And meanwhile, I'll probably have no idea, because I'm way back from Generation 2, and I'm an old man. But if something is good, people will talk about it, and it will make money. I promise. I promise. All right. However, I won't jump the gun just yet, as the season might start good, but they could still F it up in the end like season 1. Well, hang on. Season 1 was the way it was because they didn't know that they were going to get an ending, right? They basically thought, okay, we've got one season, then they're going to cancel us. We better do this as best we can. So they compressed their entire story, and it became campy and nonsensical, and they didn't explain anything that happened between Last Airbender and Legend of Korra, so you had that big divide there. That's what happened with that, so that's why it didn't go well. Season 2 was... I don't even have an explanation for season 2. There's some people going, oh, it mimics the book. It doesn't mimic anything. It's just bad. It's just bad the way it is. They had a good premise where they could go and they could... Here's the thing. The premise of season 1 was you're going to have secularism versus spiritualism in a society where they know that their gods exist. So what is the place of secularism? What is the place of mysticism? What is the place of spiritualism? And how do they all interact with each other? How does the society moving forward deal with the higher powers that be? That was a good premise, and they just chuck that. They chuck that so fast that it made my head spin. Let's look at season 3, okay? Let's look in comparison. Season 3 actually started out with a premise of what does it mean for culture versus race? Because what is airbending? What are any of these bending races? It's all genetic. If your parents are benders, there's a higher probability that you're going to be a bender. If your parents are non-benders, then there's a good chance that you're not going to be a bender. It's only when the genes and the spirituality come together in such a way that somebody who's born has the ability to bend. For example, somebody who is born in the Earth Kingdom is more likely to be an Earthbender because you have Earthbender genes there. Someone who's born in the Fire Kingdom is more likely to be a Firebender because they have Firebender genes. Look at Mako and Bolin. You have one Firebending father and one Earthbending mother. Sorry, reverse it. You have one earth-bending father and one fire-bending mother. So they've got the genes to be a bender, and then it's just the probability of luck 50-50, whether or not they get to what their power is going to be. Fire-bending or earth-bending. We got one of each, right? Fair thing. You flip a coin twice, you're likely to get one side of each. So that's the thing. And if you look at, and what this then means is, let's look at who got airbending. Boomy, who is not a bender, he got airbending. Why? Because genetically, he is 50% airbender. He's 50% waterbender, 50% airbender. So the genes, now mind you, his father is of questionable origin. So we can't exactly say what particular bender is there. Whether it's Zuko's grandfather's airbending coming down to him, or whether it's Aang's airbending coming down to him. But we know that he has the genes to be a bender, and the fact that his father may or may not have been an avatar is what influenced the fact that he's not a bender. Fire canceling out water, right? Well, because he apparently has the genes to be an airbender, he got airbending. This means that anyone else who got airbending, Zahir, any of the people in the Earth Kingdom, in somewhere in their very distant past, somewhere like around the time of Wan in the first few avatars, when people were first leaving the Lion Turtle cities, there would have been some intermixing, and it's from there that these genes are then passed down, and now in this particularly spirit-filled world, the genes are now coming out, and they're expressing themselves as airbender genes. The problem is, though, even though they may be part airbender, they've been raised in the culture of the earthbenders, or they've been raised in the culture of the non-benders. So for Tenzin to then come and say, hey, you're part of this race, you have to come and now be an air nomad, versus the culture that they're raised in, it's the question of, does culture make you, or does race make you? And they actually answered that question in under 40 minutes. It's astounding. They actually, it's not, like, take myself for example. Genetically, I am from South Asia. Even though I've never been to South Asia, 6 generations of my ancestors have lived in South America, and then I was born here in Canada. So culturally, I share absolutely nothing with the Indian subcontinent. Culturally, I am a completely different. Culturally, I'm a completely different race. So the question is it your heritage that makes you up, or is it the culture that you're raised in that makes you up? And which one do you choose over the other? The series is actually answering that question in a way that is creative, and not in a way it's creative and it's not divisive, because usually when people talk about these issues, it becomes very divisive. People take very polar sides. But the show is actually tackling this question in a way that's unique, and I think it's wonderful the way that they're doing it. The fact that they couldn't do that for the second season, it's flabbergasting. That's what it is. All right. So that's my rant for why season 3 is being better than season 2, and why season 1 is kind of the way it is. Okay, so continue on. Yes, this continues on. It says, the first thing I noticed is Zahir, the main bad guy, he is a non-bender who got airbending as a result of the harmonic event. Well, I just explained that. After 2 weeks, he was able to put down 3 to 4 White Lotus guards and escapes. How could Zahir airbend like a badass is beyond me. If you watch the leaked episodes 4 to 6, you notice this guy can pass through the spinning gates of the airbending without a sweat, and can fly a glider too. That's true. I don't know about anyone, but this is a big plot hole, and I doubt Bright will explain it. They still have no explanation as to how Amon could take people's bending with water or blood bending. And Real Bucky, you answered, Zahir's a badass by nature. That's all the explanation you need. Time out. Time out. Don't fight, guys. I love you both equally. The Okay, I'm gonna explain Zahir a little bit. You're correct. It is a big plot hole that Zahir can pass through the Airbender Gate, can fly a glider, and while it's true, if he didn't train with Tenzin and the Air Acolytes, they're going to have a very hard time explaining that. But I do feel that they do have an explanation. They're hinting at it in the background, so it's there. We're just not getting it yet. We're gonna see it. So. Hold tight. Hold tight. I think we might actually... It's hinted that he might have actually trained with some kind of spiritual teacher, so maybe he is in such control of himself that he knows airbender bending techniques, that when he got airbending, he was actually able to practice and try it. And yes, it's true. He is a badass. But that's not all the explanation we need, because let's look at another badass from Airbender. Azula. Azula is the badass to end all badasses. On my list of villains, she is number one, and I love her to death. She is my favorite character of all the Airbenders. But her just being, and yes, it's true, she is a badass. She is an extremely badass, but she's the badass that other badasses fear. But let's look at why she's a badass. She's a badass because of her father. Zuko, being a boy, and this is true for most people. There are some exceptions to this rule, but it's not very many. Young boys have a tendency to look for their mother's affection. That's where you get the term mama's boy from. So, and Zuko's mother is a very kind, very caring person. It's in her nature to be kind and caring, as is explained in The Search, which, again, goes into graphic novel territory. We really shouldn't be touching this, but in order to answer this question, this is where we need to go. So she's a very kind, very caring, very paternal parent. And she instills in Zuko a sense of morality and gentleness, right? You see this even in some of the old Airbender episodes where he throws bread at the turtle ducks and his mother scolds him and says, no, you have to be gentle, you have to be this, that, and the other, right? Azula, on the other hand, is competing for her father's attention, Lord Ozai. And as we know, Ozai is a very hard man, to say the least, and he's very strict and he's very militaristic and demanding. So when you look at the fact that Zuko is exiled with his uncle, who, like his mother, is very kind and caring and honorable, it's interesting the way that he managed to deflect away from that military mindset of the Fire Nation at the time. Azula, on the other hand, is raised right in the core of that. So the fact that she is so persistent and dogged and just the way she is, she's a product. She is the end result of the most intense form, the most extreme form, the other fork. She's the left fork of that. So looking at where she came from, looking at her background, is very integral to finding out why the character is the way they are. It's not enough to say they're just a badass. No, there has to be a reason for that. And when you look back, you can usually find the reason for things being the way they are. Azula, Zuko, it doesn't matter, you can find it. Now, as to Amon being able to take people's bending away with blood bending, I can explain that. Surprisingly enough, I can explain that. It has nothing to do with any mystical thing or any weird hocus pocus. It actually has to do with biology. You see, within the system, the whole spiritual thing of Airbender has to do with the ability to bend chi. It takes the Eastern philosophy of Tai Chi to just an extent of what the possibility. Here to extend the idea of chi to its elementals, earth, air, fire, and water, and have the ability to use your chi either through the ground to bend stones or fire or water or whatever. That's the extent. Now, the chi is channeled through the body through something called the lymphatic system. The lymphatic system is actually a series of fluid-filled canals that go all through your body. They're basically like your cooling and filtration system. And they do other things with vitamins and nutrients, but that's not what we're talking about. But They all go through your body. They connect through the spleen. The way that the heart is for all your blood vessels, the spleen is where all the lymph nodes connect. They go through your arms and just everywhere, right? So, and there's one chi point with the lymphatic system right here in the forehead. So what Amon would do is, if he was to take his ability to blood bend and apply it to the lymphatic system, and basically use that to block all the different chi channels and basically force them shut throughout the body, then the bender would not be able to move their chi, and because they can't move their chi, they can't physically bend. We saw this in Airbender with Ty Lee, as a matter of fact, where whenever she was fighting Katara, or she would always attack with her chi attack, and whenever she hit a point, and that would block the chi, not only would the arm go numb, but Katara would not be able to water bend. So, and that was only a temporary thing. Apparently Amon then managed to figure out a way to make the chi channels close permanently. So then what the Avatar is then doing is basically he's bloodbending is what he's doing. It's the way that bloodbending is an advanced form of waterbending. It would seem that spirit bending is an advanced form of bloodbending. It works out biologically. So basically, what Aang did is he blood bended Korra, or chi bended Korra, so that she could bend again. Now, how it happened that he could block her chi, but here's what I think happened. I think mentally he blocked her chi, but spiritually Rava is the reason that we know now that Rava is the reason she could airbend. It was only once she lost her ability to move her chi that basically Rava took over and had her do all the different bending. So it's a hard thing to explain, but I think that's what happened. I think Rava reopened her chi, but it was just a mental block that Korra had, that she had her bending taken away, and it was only once she reconnected with herself she was able to regain her ability to bend, and then she was able to give everybody else back their bending by removing that mental block and by reopening the chi channel. So that's one explanation. It may not be the whole explanation, but it works. It works within the idea of the show. All right. So that was one. Let's see. The next one is Real Bucky again. Kaya isn't Korra's aunt. She's the air baby's aunt. Just pointing that out. Well, if you want to get into bloodlines, technically, I wouldn't say aunt. She's a second cousin of Korra. Allow me to explain. Katara, who is the mother of Kaya, was the daughter of an airbender, of a waterbending chief, correct? For the South. Now, the chieftain of the South and the chieftains of the North are related to each other. We've established that through the relationship between Tanrak and Unalaq. That means that coming down, Kaya would be, let's see, and we know that Korra is the daughter of Tanrak. So let's see. If Tanrak would technically be a cousin of, if Tanrak would be a cousin of, or not a cousin, like a niece or nephew of Katara, then that would make Korra Katara's grandniece, and it would make her Kaya's niece, which would make her Korra's aunt. So there, yeah, it does work out. It's just a much farther relationship. I'm not saying I'm right. It's a possibility that the two are related there in some way. And if they are related, that's how they're related. But you left a nice long one, so we're going to go through that. I don't feel like Bumi gained airbending negates the development in Book 2. Bumi is just a victim of circumstance. Well, okay, I'll concede on that point. You're right. It doesn't negate everything that happened in Book 2, but if looking forward, if we had known that Bumi was going to get airbending, And then looking back at the entire conflict, that it was because he wasn't an airbender that the dad was so disappointed. It's it's almost like this. It's almost like the circumstance is being ironically unjust. It's like, okay, he was truly a very late bloomer, and he was still discriminated against by his father. You're right. It is a horrible set of circumstances. I concede the point. Regarding the Jinora Kai romance, I don't care as long as it's done right. Besides, they aren't teenagers, so it won't likely be as stressed and is more cutesy in a good way. That also makes it feel more like Avatar: The Last Airbender. Zuko was 17, Katara was 15, 16, Aang was 12, 13. I have problems, and the technical producer knows this, with just the romance between the two of them, because he's 12. What does he know about girls? And she's 14. It was more likely that she would hook up, and it was actually supposed to be that she would hook up with Zuko. And as I mentioned, after all the singularly bad romances that we've had in this Legend of Korra series, do you honestly trust any of these writers to write a good romance story between these two children? And it's so forced. It's forced simply because they happen to be the same age and they happen to be boy and girl. It's not necessary. Even if it is done right, it's not necessary. I am happier with the idea of Bolin and Opal getting together than with Jinora and Kai. 'Cause it's absolutely nonsensical. What is the reason for doing it? I put it to you. What is the reason for putting Kai and Jinora together, except for having them as love interests and trying to recreate that silly slow burn love story that they had in Airbender? It's just not good. It cannot be any good for this series. I promise. Regarding your overall opinion of Book 2, I'm not going to do it here, but I think a lot of the issues you have with the last season, hell, even the first season, can be refuted, except for the love triangle, but I don't give an F about that. Well, listen, you want to podcast about it? We'll podcast about it. I'm more than happy to stream with you, and we can discuss this. But we're not going to solve this in the comments. With this we have to work this out with the facts. Lastly, I'm thinking of making a commentary on your review of Book 2 finale, like I planned, with a few other people. Are you okay with me giving my thoughts on your thoughts? Not a problem. Go ahead. I have no qualms whatsoever with you talking about what I happened to spout. I was I was rather belligerent and maybe a little harsh, but that was a very underwhelming season finale. It could have been done a lot better, and they had so many just unjustified things that they stuck into that season end that it's not good. But I'm willing to hear you out. I'm willing to hear you out. Overall, keep it up. Thank you. Nice to see someone as intelligent as you. Oh, you're just buttering me up. Nice to see someone as intelligent as you are making videos who doesn't resort to expressing everything on this site in a super pissed off fashion. Well, I may not express things in a super pissed off fashion, but you'll notice it seems to be what most people enjoy watching. Otherwise, Angry Joe would just be, mildly irritated Joe. I'm more mildly irritated by the things that I see than actually angered. So I guess if I really want to be popular, I'll have to get super, super angry. But you're right, I'll try not to. I'll try to keep a level head. That makes you stand out. No, it doesn't. There's so many other level-headed critiquers on here. Total Biscuit, he is a perfectly level-headed critiquer. And he's famous, so... I'm critiquing a kids' TV show that apparently no one is watching, so I don't know how much that makes me stand out. I can't stand all the people who get so pissed off when ranting. It's not that I can't handle it, it just gets grating. You're right, it does get very grating on the nerves to just hear someone completely yell, especially out of context. It's one thing in the beginning to yell and express your opinion in a loud way, but after a while, I think it has to do with an energy thing. When people see somebody yelling, they more associate them with a more high energy personality, so they have a tendency to be more attracted to a very high energy personality. OFU, it's my entertainment. Anger is not going to help you, contrary to what other people believe. You are the exception to this rule. Thank you very much. TLDR, nice video. Thank you very much for your comment, and thank you very much for your analysis. It was I do not mind. I know that it takes a while to go through long comments, but I do not mind. I actually prefer the long comments because it gives me a lot to bite into. Juan, apparently you commented again. Let's see. Oh, this is Game of Thrones. We're not doing Game of Thrones on here. We're gonna tackle that next year, I promise. Wait till 2015, then I'll read that comment. But anyways, this is the end of the discussion. I don't think we can. I don't think there's anything left to say at this point. But as always, like, favorite, subscribe. If you made it this far, you are awesome. Remember that. I need to come up with a name for you guys. I've got 25 subscribers now, so I need to come up with a general name. All the successful YouTubers seem to do that. They come up with a name for their followers. So in the next few weeks, I've got to come up with a name for you guys. I don't know what it will be. I'll probably won't be able to think of one. But if you think of one that's good for everyone, hey, suggest it. I might. If it's good, I'll take it. But this has been my Korra review. It is now 3:51, and I have to be honest with you. This is the 10th take of this. It has taken so long to put this together. It's between the interruptions, between the camera being finicky, just between, oh god, just everything that has happened between Friday and right now. It is 4 a.m. on a Monday morning, and I am so exhausted. I'm sorry that this took so long to put up, but it's just the way it is. The fact, it's easier to review one episode at a time than 2 episodes at a time, because there's just so much that you have to look into them, especially with the way that they connect to each other, the way the characters flow from one to another. It's so much easier to do one at a time. Wow. This has taken the takes that ended up here were all done today. They started this morning, and they started this morning at 9 a.m. and now it's 4 o'clock the next day. So wow, just oh god. Trust me, there's a whole bunch of takes that you haven't seen. Just Saturday, just putting this all together, and then Friday, all of the reaction videos that are being released at the same time. It's so tired. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed this review. Like, favorite, subscribe, share it out. Make sure that other people come, other people see this, other people like, and they comment, and they make this all the better. I will see you next week. Talk to you later.